Hey, Rachel. I have a question for you. I know you've talked a lot recently about people's tendency to overspend for emotional reasons or binge spend. And I wanted to say I have a slight variation on that as a question. I don't necessarily go crazy shopping. I don't actually even like to shop. So I'm not someone who goes just wild binge spending. However, I do have the ability to justify certain categories of things really easily. For example, I'm someone who privileges experiences over stuff. So I will tend to prioritize spending on that or even spend over on that. Or food, for example, I might buy more food than I need or buy it because it's on sale or something like that. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on an upcoming episode, maybe about that dynamic and why that happens or what you even suggest for doing about it. Thank you.
Welcome to the Money Healing Club podcast. I'm Rachel Duncan. I'm your host. I'm a certified financial therapist and art therapist, and I founded the Money Healing Club. You just listened to a voicemail from a listener, and there's a lot to unpack here. I'm excited to do it. But before we get going, just a reminder, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It doesn't replace mental health care, financial, or legal advice. So I think what we're going to talk about today is not just impulse spending in general, but what we're looking at is why is it that certain categories just feel a lot easier to justify spending on or overspending on? Like, why do some categories just feel so different? You feel maybe a little more carried away on certain topics. And there's one thing I first really aligned with this listener about. I actually don't love the process of shopping in general either. I'm with you on that. However, there are a couple categories I enjoy more than others, like a good thrift store or a yard sale. I get a little carried away at those. Look, we all have our kryptonite of spending categories. And, even the people who come to me with, impulse spending problems that really are impacting their functioning, they might feel really out of control with it. They don't overspend on everything, usually, not on every category. So this is a really useful reframe. And actually brings us into the nuance, which is so important. Like, this is not on every category. At least that's how I'm interpreting your question. So it's not like, why do I overspend? Why do I impulse spend? But why do these categories feel so different? I love this topic. So I'm going to take actually your two examples and really unpack them in this episode. One is about experiences, entertainment, stuff like that. And the other is about food. And we are really going to look at what your spending is trying to say and how to do some healing so that when it comes up, you can process it and feel a little bit more integrated with it. So we're not catastrophizing. We're not overgeneralizing. I love that. To use a few therapy speak words. So number one, let's look at experiencing things rather than buying stuff. We all might buy experiences, put money towards them for very different reasons. And so I'd like you to think about what are the big reasons why. It might seem self-evident, but it could also be very particular to you. Is it novelty, memory making? Is it connecting with others if it's a social thing? Is it getting physical exercise? Is it a way to process stress? All are totally valid and might be different for one person to another. I want you to just really brainstorm. If there's one category of thing that you love to do, maybe it's flying to Las Vegas, right? So what are all the things that you really value about that? It's a wonderful thing to honor. It's okay to want things. And when we kind of honor it and write out the list, we can then think a little bit more expansively about what are some other ways you can exercise those values, right? If it's connection, is it, hey, maybe I could put together more outings with my friends or have them over more often. Maybe that would sort of meter my desire to overspend on the experiences with them, because really, actually, I just like being with them. So, we're slowing down to kind of think of more possibilities and get a little more creative if you're wanting to spend less on those particular things. So when we go to the emotional side first, which is always the place I recommend we go first, kind of see what's going on for you, why those certain values are coming up with this category. I want to also go over to the practical side. Do you have a line item for these things, right? If, hey, you're a travel person, let's make sure you are saving for that travel because, hey, that's more important to you than stuff. Great. I would plan for it, bake it in there, have some padding and flexibility so that when it comes up, you already have a little stash for it. Now, on a deeper level, though, especially if there are certain experiences, certain things that you buy that it's just so easy to do add-ons or overspend, or you get sort of this feeling of maybe being carried away or a different part of you comes up. I want you to pause and get really curious. Are there memories coming up with that particular kind of spending? Is it a certain age that you were? Is it a part of you that didn't get to come out before? So to take a more generic example, let's say your family did summer trips or summer vacations, and they were really fun. They were really connective. Your parents weren't working. Everyone had a great time. And so as an adult, it just feels really inherent that you would put quite a bit of money towards it, or that it's just so meaningful that that maybe you get a little carried away. I could understand that, and we can get into the layers of what was really going on in that memory for you, and how you can even bring little bits of that in that doesn't have to be an expensive vacation. On the other side, it could be that there was something you did not get to experience as a kid, and you told yourself, "Oh, when I'm a grown up, I'm going to do that." And that can also feel like a kind of an endless wheel where it's never quite satisfied because it's old stuff. It's an older, I should say even younger part of you that is needing some healing, and no amount of spending on that category is actually going to heal that part of you. So look, there are infinite reasons why anybody buys a certain thing. So I would encourage you to get really curious about, why is it this thing? Why does it bother me? Why did I call a financial therapy podcast about it? Is there something that kind of bugs you about doing it? And from where I sit, I would really want to know, what connections are coming forward for you? What parts of you? What age do you feel when it comes up? Are you feeling like a 5-year-old? Are you feeling like a rebellious teenager? And these are all, I think, really, really important, open-ended questions for you to just notice, to incorporate and process. It's something you can bring to therapy. It's something you can journal about, or even just sit with and have a walk and think about, oh, I was that age when that thing happened. Or, yeah, this kind of thing didn't happen when I was growing up, and I'm really trying to replay it now, but it never seems like enough. These are all valid things to process on your own or with someone that you trust and feel safe with. So what I'm talking about is just inviting a little bit of integration if you're feeling fragmented. So the other example you brought up is food. Food is a big thing. It's something we're interacting with daily, like money. It's tied to both survival and pleasure. And there's just a lot. There's a lot behind food. And so I wanted to bring in an expert in sort of our emotional connection with eating and food, and that is the wonderful Leah Kern. Leah and I have done collaborations in the past about how budget culture and diet culture have a lot in common. So I've welcomed her back just to comment on this voicemail. Leah is a registered dietitian and an intuitive eating coach. And we're going to hear her take on what might be going on for this person, especially when it comes to food. Welcome to the podcast, Leah. My friend Leah Kern, the expert on anything food related. I always bring you in. Thanks for being here.
Yay. Thanks for having me, Rachel.
So the part of this listener's question that I wanted to segment and talk to you about is, okay, there's an intersection of, we have to spend money for food. So there's an overlap of money and food. And when it comes to food, this is a tender topic. And this is why I wanted to bring you in. So how would you even just describe from your point of view what's going on for this listener?
Yeah. So from the question alone, it's a little hard to say because we don't know your whole backstory and all that. But I will say in general, there are many reasons why a person might feel compelled to quote unquote, overspend on food or buy more than you need or always buy food if it's on sale. One reason could be if you grew up with any kind of food scarcity that doesn't go away, even if that's several years or decades in your past. It can really live in you. This kind of fear of being in scarcity, and we can respond with wanting to always have an abundance. Another piece is, even if you didn't grow up with the typical kind of food scarcity that one might think of, if you grew up in a home or even, in adulthood, imposed any kind of food rules or dieting, if you had a quote unquote almond mom and only had ingredients in the house or didn't have much say in getting to have like fun foods and that kind of thing, that can result in this rebellion response of like, I want to have all the things and everything fun around. Sometimes we see this too with like, if you were that friend growing up where you go to your friend's house and eat all their snacks and want all their fun things, that is a really normal response to any kind of restriction. And so those are the thoughts that immediately come to mind when I think about why this might be happening. There's one other piece which Rachel and I have talked about before called the sadness of saying enough, which is food is pleasurable. And in life, when anything is, well, the sadness of saying enough is a little bit of a departure from this question, but really the idea is like, in life, when anything pleasurable comes to an end, like a vacation or, I don't know, a concert or an experience, there can be a sadness of, oh man, it's over. And with food, we can see this too, or like if a pleasurable eating experience is coming to an end, it can feel sad. And one way of coping with that is buying more food and having more fun stuff around to kind of counteract some of the sadness. And it's really normal. Some people think it's dramatic to say, oh, we need to grieve the moment that we feel full because that means that the eating experience is coming to an end if we're honoring our cues. But it's not dramatic. And it's especially not dramatic if you have any history of restriction or disordered eating, because your body can be like, oh my God, what if we don't have any pleasurable eating experiences again?
Right. Like that panic. I love both of these points. And I would even, I would be really curious about like, hey, what is there an age that you feel? Does it bring you back to a certain time when you're in that mode of, oh, there's a sale, or, oh, I need to fill my cart, or the feeling you have when you open your fridge and it's maybe a little more empty? And to sit with a little curiosity, just noticing, does it recall to a memory? Do you feel a certain age? I love that you brought up the rebellion, because I think that comes up a lot. Like, oh my God, I'm a little teenager about this. You can't tell me what to eat. I'm going to eat all the snacks. And even like my voice changes and my whole vibe changes. This different part of me comes up. And I think the first step is just noticing that and getting really curious. In the world of psychology, we might call this, is there some unfinished business here? A loop that didn't quite close.
Yeah, I have some clients who say something like, they remember being young and thinking, oh my gosh, when I'm an adult, I can just like buy a cake on a random day if I want a cake. And you totally can. I think the question here is, when I listen to this listener question, my immediate feeling is like, is this even a problem? Is it just something you're noticing and wondering about the origins of? When I think of whether or not it's a problem, I think about things like, is food going to waste? Are you buying more than you're able to use? Are you buying things that are just sitting around and you never actually want them, but you just feel the need to buy them because they're on sale? If those things aren't happening, I do think there's a world in which there's a lot of food that's shelf stable. And I totally grew up in a family where certain things were on sale and my mom knew we would use them. She would buy a bunch of it because this is a shelf stable good. So I'm like hesitant to like pathologize this.
Totally. Me too. And I almost think that like, maybe this listener brought this up as like, why is this so inconsistent? Why am I pretty self-aware? I don't really have impulsive stuff with other categories, but that's like specific categories. And I think, it comes across my desk a lot is like, why am I this way in one moment and another way in one moment, and then I don't trust myself? A little bit like, why am I kind of all across the board maybe? Or why do I have these moments where it feels maybe a little more chaotic? But I agree with you. It's like, well, is it a problem? And I think that's really fair to like back up on. It's like, are there exterior judgments? Who's saying that it's a problem? It's a great question.
Yeah. And I also think about with food, there's this interesting thing of like, we always need to eat. It can be justified in a way of like, you might go to a bougie grocery store and buy expensive cheese or something, but like ultimately you need food. I mean, there's probably an argument to be made for like, you need clothes and you need a lot of things, but like how much is too much? But with food, I just often think about, you got to feed yourself. So like if there's food in the house and you are going to eat it and it's not going to go bad, is it a problem?
Right. There's a little bit of caring for yourself. Hey, always having something in the freezer and cupboard is actually caring for your future self. And, maybe there's a moment of like, oh, I have too much. Yeah. And it's going bad. Leah, I'll just say, I've been doing a big like pantry clean out, and there's some like pandemic era dry beans, and I could not cook them enough. Like they're 6 years old now. And so I did have to check them.
They're going to be hard.
They were just little pebbles I swear, an hour in the pressure cooker. But like, okay, I didn't, I also was just like a couple bags, but like, I don't like that. I don't want food to go to waste. So it's like, okay, then I'm going to be more aware of that going forward, and so maybe it is just a little bit of that awareness. And I would say, I think that when we're feeling in that moment of like, that kind of stimulation, especially if there's a feeling of scarcity, like buy now, or it's only on sale for this little bit, that it's natural for that reaction. Oh no, I need to do this now, is to take some cues about like, where do you feel safe right now? Right? Do I have enough? A little bit of a moment of what does enough feel like? And noticing it's different for everybody, but what internal cues, external cues do you have that show that you are safe? And that if you let that deal go, if you walk past that stand, that clearance rack, you're still going to be okay.
Totally.
I have to say, I'm doing this internal dialogue with me. I'm a big scrounger. I love a clearance aisle, and sometimes it does get the best of me. So I'm like doing a lot of dialoguing with myself in those moments that I'm still going to be okay, even if I don't buy that.
Yeah. I just want to add one other piece. So my background is as an intuitive eating dietitian. So it's like, that's just really quickly, it's opposite of dieting, listening to your body's cues. And from an intuitive eating perspective, having an abundance around that can actually be really healing for your nervous system. Because at our root, we're working with our like reptilian wiring, and we don't like scarcity. Our brains don't know that it's 2026 and there's an abundance of food. There's on every corner and Uber Eats and, whatever. If our pantry is empty, it can trigger this feeling of like, I need to overeat because I need to stock up in case I don't have enough to get my needs met. So from that perspective, like one of the first thing I do with clients is, and again, I don't know this person has a history of disordered eating or anything like that, but just for listeners, because Rachel and I know there is this intersection of disordered relationship with food and money, binge spending, binge eating. From a intuitive eating perspective, a lot of people think that to feel more in control around food, they need to have less in the house so that they have these guardrails. And if they binge, at least they can't binge on that much because there's not that much in the house. But the irony is that you actually need more to signal to your brain, look, you have an abundance. We don't need to panic. We don't need to hyper focus on food. We don't need to increase our drive to seek out energy dense, aka calorie dense foods. You're safe. You have what you need. So from that perspective, I love having an abundance in the house, and I love, stocking the home and buying maybe more than enough is something that can be useful depending on your history.
I agree. And I think even like another paradigm shift from the counseling desk is, how is the problem the solution? It's
I love that.
Working somehow, right? And maybe there's judgment, maybe there's shame, maybe there's complex feelings around it, or maybe there's a long-term effect, but like in some ways it's working. How is it working? How is it not working? Right? Just backing up and slowing down about it, and to acknowledge, hey, you're not like this with everything in your life. There are just a couple of things. Okay, then let's get curious about this and sit with it. Leah, you are just a wealth of wisdom. Thank you so much for hopping on. And if anyone wants to catch up on your work in intuitive eating, where would you have them go?
Yeah, I have a podcast of my own. Rachel was on some time ago. The podcast is called Shoulders Down. We talk about intuitive eating, body image, healing your relationship with food. And then my website, leahkernrd.com.
Wonderful. We'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for popping in, Leah.
Thanks, Rachel.
Isn't Leah just great? If you want to find out more about her work, go to her podcast, Shoulders Down. I'll link that in the show notes. You can also find her at leahkern.com, also in the show notes. She's even given us a little special coupon on her audio course, just for my listeners. She's giving us 20% off her 10 steps to food freedom. Use the code MONEYHEALERS20. That's Money Healers with an S20. Tell her I sent you. I'm really sitting with this idea of it's okay to have a quiet moment with yourself and honor the feeling of sadness from saying enough, especially when you're in the middle of changing a habit. There can be a little grief there. And we just want to normalize to this listener and anyone else who's listening and resonating with this, that this process doesn't have an exact 5-step plan to get to the other side of. It's this messy, curious, personal process. And it is something we unpack every week in the Money Healing Club membership. Why do our money behaviors come up is so emotional. And so as a group, as a forum, an online forum, we process these things. The messy business, the hearing other people struggling with things that they haven't shared elsewhere. It's a very healing experience. I invite you to check it out at moneyhealingclub.com/club. Get on the wait list for the membership. Okay, as we wrap up this episode, here are just some big reflection questions. When there is a certain category of thing that just feels more emotionally charged when you want to buy it, a little bit harder to control, like a different gear kicks in or a different part of you steps in, I want you to simply get curious. Also, if it just happened and you didn't catch it at the time, that's okay. We're going to process something that recently happened too. What memories and connections are living there? And why are those feeling important right now? Am I feeling a different mode come up, a different part of me, a certain age? What would not having that thing mean? Now, without threatening yourself, right? We don't want to bring up scarcity as a threat. It's just sort of out of curiosity. Sometimes imagining being without a thing can help us identify why it's so important. What would having a pause be like? If this is related to something in your past, what would you have liked someone to say to you in that moment, that something you really needed to hear back then? This can be an incredibly healing experience with this money stuff. I find that sometimes we need to learn to be our own best parent and give ourselves the kind of guidance that we needed way back when. I want to circle back to what Leah was saying about the sadness of saying enough. It feels just so tender. It's so true, such a private experience. I think many of us have probably experienced, and that it's not something we can really share. That, hey, that was a big deal. I only walked out with, one dress from the shop. That's a big deal for me. And maybe there isn't another place I can share that. I just want to honor that, especially, with experiences, stuff that have to do with personal development, spontaneity, fun, play, connection, possibility. Those are all great. And we need relief when we're living in these very stressful times. And they can get expensive, especially if they're tied to any unfinished business we have in the past. It sounds like this listener is actually very confident in, hey, I value experiences way more than stuff. And I think that's great. I want to give you permission to want things and to honor this is an important thing for you and plan for it financially. While also, also saying to yourself very kindly, that's enough, or maybe not today, or let's just look at the savings account and see what's possible. Or am I getting in this emotional carried away thing that's clouding my ability to make a decision that feels like it has more integrity for me? It doesn't mean no. It just means being a little more mindful. I'm using my whole brain for this decision. Also, as a little sidebar, especially when we're talking about experiences and food, both experiences and food have gotten a lot more expensive than other aspects of our life, especially since the pandemic. So I just want to validate if, you've been doing a habit hey, I do 2 or 3 trips a year. I keep doing that, but now I'm getting into debt for it. There could be an aspect of the economy here. It's more expensive than it used to be to eat out, to travel, to go to concerts. So while we want to take responsibility for what's ours, we also want to look at the context at large. And there's not a whole lot we can do to change that on a systemic level, although not buying those things is actually a collective way that we can help bring prices down. So I'm just saying it might not entirely be because of your emotional stuff. There could be some economic stuff there too. While we're talking about systemic impacts, on sale now or clearance bin or, low stock warning, these things are all scarcity tactics. They work. They are everywhere. And I think trying to have an eye open and noticing them. Oh, is this saying, there's only one left, or it's a limited time sale? How is that impacting my decision? Would I buy this thing if there weren't the scarcity aspect of it? Something I often ask myself is, would I pay full price for this thing? That can sometimes weed out a lot. So I do want you to notice how systemically we are pulled into buying things, maybe with a quicker decision or a higher price point than we would otherwise because of scarcity tactics around time, deals closing, limited availability. So just notice that, especially with categories you don't impulse spend, and try to catch it when it's there. Okay? A little pause goes a long, long way. So to recap, I want you to identify your particular kryptonite categories and notice when you're not impulse spending, because you're not doing it all the time. Next, get curious and specific about the feelings, the memories, and the connections with that particular kind of thing. Not only the thing, but maybe what it was like buying those things, and just get really curious. Maybe it was like a really positive association and you're trying to relive it. Maybe it was the absence of that and you are trying to scratch that itch forever and ever. We're just noticing patterns. And if you notice that a certain age comes out in you or a certain part of you, you can dialogue with it. Hey, I notice you're just popping in here. Oh, right, this is feeling familiar. Slow down. Process it verbally if that works for you. Process it creatively, privately if that works for you. Maybe it's something you can bring to a friend, a therapist, someone safe. And then I want you to think about the sadness of enoughness. What does enoughness feel like? You probably feel it in other aspects of your life. Could I transfer a little bit of that feeling over to this thing? And look, change is hard. Parts of you might really rebel against these kinds of changes, but just as long as you stay kind to yourself, patient, curious, some really wonderful healing that can happen, not out of restriction or shame, but pausing and trying to give these young parts of you the wisdom of a nurturing parent figure that you needed at that certain time, or something that you needed to hear at that time. And if you're like, oh yeah, I definitely have a category or two that is my kryptonite, welcome to being human. And because consumerism has trained us all to meet our needs through spending primarily. So it takes a real act of rebellion and community joining to slow that down and think about what's really going on and to create change in yourself and help others. These are the things we explore in the Money Healing Club membership all the time. Doors open and close several times a year. So go to moneyhealingclub.com, click membership, hop on the wait list, see what's going on there. Because getting better with money is actually a process of understanding yourself, not stopping yourself. And community just makes it so much easier. Really, really. It takes the load off. One of the Money Healing Club members recently reminded me of a wonderful Oscar Wilde quote. He said, "I can resist anything except temptation." Good one, Oscar. If this episode hit home for you, if you'd like to comment on this episode or bring up another topic, I would love to have your voicemail to feature on an upcoming episode. You can go to moneyhealingclub.com/podcast. There's a big orange button. You can leave a message anywhere. I will make you sound good. And I just love responding to these listener questions. Thanks so much, and I will see you next time.